I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right. Well, first and foremost, for those of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting, I am Ashley Michelle Thublin, the Executive Director of Communications for Asheville City Schools. I'm the one who calls y'all all the time and sends you all those emails. And I'll be the one who's kind of a little bit facilitating this evening's discussion, just to keep the ball rolling and just make sure that we are cognizant of our time. So just as a reminder, tonight's discussion is all about Asheville Primary, of course, but it's really specifically about our connection with DOT and hear more from their connector project, as well as about the facility needs. So we already have another virtual town hall on the books for Tuesday, November 10th. And during that meeting is when we're going to discuss more of the building's capacity and curriculum. So this evening is really and truly a mirror of what we did on September 15th. We just had a few people that asked us to do it on 2 different dates. So we're going to be talking about those things. Just wanted to get us all kicked off and started. So to begin with, we're going to hear a little bit more from DOT about the I26 Connector project and how it will eventually impact Asheville Primary School.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll speak. I think I'm live. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So this is Shane Casta, the Assistant Superintendent for Auxiliary Department for Asheville City Schools, and I want to thank all of our families and our participants that are here tonight, all those that are stakeholders in Asheville Primary in our district. So we appreciate you being here. We also have invited Steve Cannon tonight to be a part of this meeting. Steve represented North Carolina Department of Transportation at the last meeting, and we were very appreciative of him doing that. And so we're very thankful he's here again tonight. We weren't sure whether he was going to be able to join or not, so we're very thankful you're here tonight, Steve. So Steve, if you can, just sort of like you did the last time, give us the latest update and sort of the 30,000-foot view of the project, and then in particular talk about most recent changes around the Haywood Road and Asheville Primary location there. Just give us sort of the update, if you could, please.
Absolutely. Glad I could join you this afternoon for the meeting. I'm glad for the community involvement here with this, and give you an update on where the project is. We got this I26 Connector project is split into 3 pieces. And what we're calling sections A, B, and C. And this location right here at Haywood is right on the border between sections A and B. We've had some changes come about. At the last meeting, I talked about it a little bit, and it's now been finalized. The Board of Transportation voted last week on some changes to our schedules. And you'll see those changes if you look into this project. But it's really a change in how it's funded and how we actually advertise the project. So the actual construction dates are still basically what they were before. And that is the fall of 2023 is what we're looking at now for construction. There have been talk before, a lot of people are looking at, 21, 22, but under the previous schedule, that 2021, 2022 date was a date to begin what we call a design build process, which would be design, utilities, right away, and construction all in one package. Now that's transitioned to where it's going to be designed up to a point, and then construction could possibly be a separate advertisement or a different award to a contractor, and that's where the 23 date comes in. So they're on the same schedule. Nothing's really changed as far as when you actually see construction on the ground. But if you look at the numbers, it looks a little different on the calendar, just on how we'll actually get to that point. I do have an image here of a map that we produced that we met with the Asheville School Board with a little over a year ago, and I'll go ahead and see if I can screen share this map. It should be coming up here in just a second. There we go. And so I want to just kind of go through some of the changes you see here on this alignment and reconfiguration of the school parking and driveway. And this is what we got proposed currently. When we go into design, there's opportunities to kind of tweak this a little bit more. So this is not set in stone at this point, but this is the result of us working with the Asheville School Board in the past, and this is what we've come up with. So you would actually have a traffic pattern that would come off of Haywood and turn and go down Argyle, and you'd have a loop here for traffic to go back up, and the buses would still load here on Argyle. You'd have a drive that comes in at the lower end at the lower field and would come up one direction going back towards Haywood, back up to the intersection up here. And we'd have additional parking that would be built in some of these areas that's not currently there now to make up for some of the parking that's going to be lost in other locations. One big change you'll notice is when you come out onto Haywood, there is a proposed median out here on Haywood, so that would be a right turn only coming out. And the connector that's taking you over currently to the ramp will be cut off and closed off. And that ramp will actually be brought in. I don't know how well it's showing up on your screen is there, but there's two arrows up here, and then there's two green lines that are running kind of parallel. If you can see my cursor there, those are the outlines of the pavement for the new ramp. And in those two lines, they merge into one lane at the bottom of the ramp. But that would be the proposed new ramp. And so that's over a little bit closer to the highway than the current ramp is. Underneath this, you can see the old roadbed running out here, and it crosses the new one. And in between that new ramp and the school parking area is this area we've got labeled here as a greenway. This project does include greenways in several areas, and this is one of those areas that will connect back up to Patton Avenue and then out Patton Avenue to give a little bit better multimodal access along the project as well. So that image you're looking at here is the latest we have for the school connections. Again, it's not set in stone. It is something that can be looked at. I know at the last meeting there were some questions about this. One of the questions was who would be funding this and paying for this, and it would be a DOT. We did check into that, verify the funding for these improvements would be DOT funded as part of mitigation for the project. There was also a question about the intersection at Haywood Road and Argyle, whether we could put a stop control situation there. We don't know yet. We did make a note of that for the file, so when we do move into the next design phase, we can actually look at that and take that into account. Of course, we'll be coordinating that with the school as well, since that would affect your traffic flows there. That, in a nutshell, is what we're looking at here on this part of the project. Does anybody have, I guess, we turn it over for questions, Shane? How do you want to do that?
Yeah, I was going to say, so just so we can be respectful of yours time, Steve, if anybody has any specific questions about the DOT project, I think now would be a great time to answer them. And then if you think of others, we're going to be having a Google form at the very end that you can submit your questions in that way as well. I know last time after the meeting got finished, we got a question that was saying, okay, so we've heard from DOT that they pushed the project back. So why are we looking at renovating Asheville Primary School now, or why are we making these moves right now? And really, it's just about being proactive. And so we're not having to, do construction on a campus, or potentially have to do construction on a campus at the same time the DOT is trying to do this mass project. But I think this now is a great time. If anybody has questions for Steve, this is a great time to ask them.
Steve, I have one question. This is Shane Casta. You had mentioned the design phase and the construction phase. Would the design phase potentially start before July 2023?
Yes. So the design phase for section A, which is, if you're looking at this map here in Haywood, it's the section that goes from here back up towards UNCA, towards Patton Avenue. No, excuse me, B. That's section B, excuse me. To the north of section B. What we're anticipating right now is that the design phase on that will start next summer, summer 21. Take about a year and a half to possibly 2 years. And then as we finish designing certain sections, we'll go ahead and move into what we call the right-of-way phase, where we start acquiring right-of-way and start going ahead and doing the utility relocations. So that would be taking place leading up to that 23 timeframe. The section to the south from here that goes from Haywood back down generally to around Brevard Road, just a little further south of Brevard Road. That one would also go in design next year, and the contracts will be about in the same time frame, but it's most likely it's going to be two separate designers and contractors.
Okay. Yeah, that makes much more sense. We talk about splitting that project up, but also kind of belays the point that now is actually a good time to be discussing this, simply because this will be the last school year before that design part goes in. And obviously, you're going to want to know all of the all the moving parts around this area to do a better design and make that more functional for everybody. So
Yes, sir.
I think it's a good time for us to be having this conversation, especially let's say that we did do some type of a renovation to the building that could possibly impact some part of the design potentially down the road. So we would want to make sure we were informing you of what we were doing.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions about the design. Can you,
just because, sorry, Polly, can you make sure, just because we had parents that asked that you identify yourself?
Sure.
And sorry, it was funny. I told our speakers that beforehand, but I haven't told all of our parents. If you have any questions, if you'll just say who you are and what your connection to Asheville Primary is, just so everyone on the call will know too. I'm sorry about that, Polly. Goodness.
No problem. I'm Polly. I'm the preschool enrollment and engagement coordinator based in Asheville Primary. And one question that I had was making sure that I understood the traffic flow that goes behind the gym and field. The traffic circle or the bus turnaround that you're showing is in the location of the existing bus turnaround, right? So you would be driving behind where the bus turnaround is to connect to Argyle?
Yeah, so this location down here, if I can move my map over a little bit here. This area right here, yeah, it's kind of an area proposed, but you know, we'll be adding some curb and gutter and be a little bit wider. So it'd be in the same general spot.
Okay, and then another question was, do you know what the traffic pattern would be for families exiting Argyle Lane onto Haywood Road? If there would be, I'm assuming that it's not possible to get a traffic light, but I'm wondering what the plan is for parents turning from Argyle onto Haywood Road.
Yeah, so it'll still stay a full movement. You can make a right and left hand turns coming out. That will remain. Most likely we would not have a signal just because of how close it is to the signal that'll be at the ramps. But we will, based on some notes and comments and concerns we got at the last meeting, we will be looking at, you know, whether there needs to be stop conditions there, if it needs to be full time, if it needs to be school hours or something of that nature. That will be something we'll look at a little closer. We just don't have that designed at this point.
Got it. And do you happen to know where the greenway goes from the school? What is the next point? Like, what's the intention? Where would that greenway take you? Yeah,
so this greenway here starts, if I'm remembering correctly, it starts back down towards, gosh, I'm drawing an absolute blank, Amboy, down that way. It goes back up through this area, cuts across, and goes out to Patton Avenue. And actually, the Jeff Bowen bridges that are there now that have multiple lanes on those are being redesigned. So the 26 Connector project, the traffic for I26 will actually go across Patton Avenue, continue north across the river, and then tie back in to the existing 26 route. So the Patton Avenue bridges, or Jeff Bowen bridges, will become more local traffic, just what's on Patton Avenue. So we're reducing those lanes. Those lanes will go down to just a couple of lanes in each direction. And then the rest of the footprint on that bridge will actually be, we're working with the aesthetics committee with the city of Asheville to come up with designs on that will include tying the greenway in to that and tying in bicycle pedestrian facilities across that bridge.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Did anybody else have any questions specific for Steve? I want to make sure we get him answered while he is still on our call. Okay, hearing none. I think we're going to move on to our next part. Steve, if you wouldn't mind, can you stop sharing your screen?
I sure will. Sure will. Thank you all.
I can figure out exactly. I was just saying I have my agenda pulled up over here. And then, but if y'all, like I said, if y'all think of additional questions for Steve, we will be having that Google form at the very end, and we'll get them to him. That's what we did after our last meeting. So
is it possible to send us the drawing that you were just projecting? I know at one point we had a printed out one, but it looks like it's changed since then. That would be really helpful if I forget what you told me later.
Yes. What's the best way to do that? I can certainly send that out. Is it best Ashley, to
Ashley
send that to
Michelle.
you? Or?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you'll
Okay.
send it to me, that would be great, because I'm going to be sending out communication probably tomorrow or Thursday at the latest with a link, another link for our questions, and then an update again about our next one, and then I can include this graphic in here too. So I'm writing that down to get to include that graphic.
I'll send that to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, if I don't write it down, oh goodness, when you're doing Zoom calls from your house. All right, our next item that we have on is Shane, people would like to hear more from you about how we receive our funding from Buncombe County commissioners and hear where we get the money and that it doesn't exactly just come from us. So Shane, if you'll give us a little bit more information about that, that would be perfect.
Okay. So our funding sources for our capital projects really constitute two different pots. One of those pots is a overall, what we call capital fund that we get from Buncombe County government each year. It's our part of our local funding application. And we go to the commissioners in usually April. We start that budget process sometime usually in February to March. Don Sims, and Don's on the call here. He's our director of maintenance and facilities. And he and I will go through the buildings and we will meet with each of the principals. We develop what we call a needs assessment. That's a yearly update that we have. Plus we have an overall larger needs assessment. That's a 5-year plan. And we even have one that's a 15-year plan that goes even farther out. But essentially, we update that on a yearly basis, beginning in February and March. We then develop a budget of what we believe the greatest needs are of the district, and then we go to the county commissioner meeting in March or April or May, and we have what we call our county budget ask, what we're asking for in capital expenditures. And generally speaking, and I'm trying to pull up those numbers from what we asked this last year. Hold on just a second. I can kind of give you those numbers. Generally speaking, that's somewhere in the $2 million range. Now, that $2 million has to do a couple of things. One, that has to supply all of our custodial and maintenance repairs, just for the general upkeep of the buildings. Then in addition, it also then does our larger sort of what we call our capital projects, sort of the smaller capital projects that we're able to do. There are some projects that are above, let's say above $100,000 though, that obviously we can't budget into our budget. Our budget just couldn't handle those types of large needs. But those are projects that we go to a separate funding source. Now, what's confusing is it's also from Buncombe County government, but it's part of a special tax from what we call an Article 39. It's part of the sales tax in Buncombe County, and that's a special fund set aside in what we call Article 39 funds. And those are for larger projects that are above $100,000 that show a greater level of need. And those really are what funds our larger capital expenditures. For instance, we just went to that committee yesterday, Dawn and I did, and we were awarded, for large projects throughout the district that were above $100,000. Now, part of that funding, obviously, we're competing against Buncombe County Schools as well. And so, the Buncombe County Schools is 23,000 students. We're 4,300 students. So you can see that a lot of our needs are going to be, in relative terms to what their asks are as well, because they have needs. So besides just our normal pot of money that's from Buncombe County, that's our year-to-year projects that are the smaller ones, then the larger ones that we get awarded. And those can be awarded, we may get a small share of the money. We may get a larger share of the money. It really just is based on need. Now, part of that need is, okay, is the project we're asking for going to affect a large number of students? If it's a large percentage of a student body that's going to be affected, is there a timeline on it? In other words, for instance, some of the projects are about ADA compliance or Title IX compliance. So some of those projects have to be done in a very timely manner. Some of those larger projects that are above 100,000 are because of the age of the building. For instance, several years ago, Isaac Dixon was a project that was funded through those funds, and it was a large ask. Asheville Middle was a brand new building that was funded through that same set of funds. So that sort of gives you a sort of a layout of our two big pots of money that we get our capital expenditures from. Dawn, you are on the call as well. If you'd like to add to that, you feel free to do so.
And Dawn, Dawn and Shane, one thing that you might want to go into a little bit more is when we were answering some of the questions during our September 15th meeting, one of the things that we talked about, not only the number of students impacted, but the level of the return on investment and how that had to always be considered before we would go to the Capital Fund Commission for special projects. Maybe go into a little bit more detail about what exactly that means when you say return on investment too.
Go ahead, Don. If you want to do that, you can take that if you want to.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what that question is, but what we do is the way we do our capital projects. When we go to the school commission, we prioritize them, and we have the critical list, we have the high priority list, and we have the priority list. So each one of our facilities is evaluated and looked at of which infrastructure that we want to work with and what is our most pressing need at that point when we go to the Capital Commission. So I didn't get all that question. It broke up. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there.
So with that one, I just was saying we were talking about last time the number of students impacted as well as the level of the return on investment and how that must always be considered when going to the Capital Fund Commission for special projects. So maybe
yes,
exactly what we're referring to when we say return on investment, what that means. You know, is that talking about like timeline of the building? I mean, I just, you know, maybe give us a little bit more detail of that.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Shane.
No,
go ahead.
Okay. So, excuse me. So basically what we have to think about is the age of the building. If the condition of the building, for instance, is already compromised, and the cost to get that building back up to what we would say would be full readiness, full safety, full security, full everything across the board, sometimes the cost of that amount of money to do that would be beyond the value of the building itself. And so the building itself would not retain the value or even have a lifespan long enough to warrant that kind of expenditure. And so, Dawn, I'm going to put a number, and I'm trying to find the slides. I think I've got it. I'll present it here in just a second. But Dawn, I believe that number was at $7 million to get Asheville Primary, that building on Haywood, up to its full security, full safety, full level of what we would feel comfortable with. Is that accurate?
Yes, it was around $7 million, maybe a little over, since building costs at this point in time and is up from what they were, say, a year ago when we did this analysis of this building. So it's around $6 to $8 million to bring this building up to modern day codes such as windows, ventilation. The heat and air conditioning system in this building is completely antiquated. We have parts and pieces over there that we can't even find parts for now on our HVAC controls. All those kind of things are considered when you look into renovating a building. So when you look into renovation opposed to new, where do you draw that line? And that line becomes much thinner when you're putting a tremendous amount of money into a building that needs a lot of work is the best way I can say that.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. So I'm, as Michelle, I'm presenting my screen, and I think you can see there. I think I'm trying to get.
We can see it.
Okay, so basically that number was from a couple of years ago, Dawn. I think that PFA
Right. And it's
listing
yeah.
was from several. So
right now it's
when you
around
add
6 to 8 million.
yeah, when you add the critical plus the high priority, and then there's another level below that, which is just sort of, you know, below
Priority.
critical needs, so priority,
Yes.
right? So when you add all those categories together, I believe it's over 8 million. But just our critical and high priority projects alone for that building right now would be over $6 million.
Yes.
So, Mr. Casta and Dawn, Mr. Sims, I would be remiss, Dr. Jean would get a little perturbed if we did not make mention that no final decision has been made about Asheville Primary. At this point, we're literally just gathering information and hearing additional feedback and presenting what we do know. But Dawn and Shane, this may be a tag team, or this may just be Dawn talking about this list. Some of the biggest concerns, and I know that we've talked about, and we've, of course, shared with our families about the current condition of our current Asheville Primary School building, is our antiquated windows, the air quality, especially as they do construction, and as well as the mold and asbestos, and then of course the I26 Connector project. But is there anything? Can y'all go into a little bit more detail about any of those, big concerns?
One of the reasons.
Go ahead, Dawn.
One of the reasons that we do have this renovation price is because we did do a building study, and that all this information, so like Ashley and Michelle is talking about, we're gathering all this information to see where we stand with the existing building and what would be the better thing to do, with the renovations, with building, those kind of things. So this building has a lot of issues that would have to be dealt with through its infrastructure, the things you really don't see every day, the plumbing, the HVAC systems, the flooring, the window putty, all those kind of things. So that's what we're doing currently, is just exactly what Ashley Michelle says. No decision has been made. We're just looking at all the different options, comparing what we can do renovation wise, what we can do. Our first priority is life safety. It will always be life safety in a building. So those will be among your critical needs. So that's kind of what we're doing. Shane, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead with what you were going to say.
I was going to say exactly that, Don. Plus, the fact is, like I want to show you in our budget that we put in for this year, every building, and I'm sort of highlighting it or circling it there now. We put in the budget for $45,000 to upgrade all of our HVAC systems throughout the entire system with a higher grade filter, to make sure that we had a filter that we felt more confident going into a COVID-19 pandemic. And so that's a cost that that we've put in, and that's there for Asheville Primary this year immediately. You can also see that we were so concerned about this building that we went ahead and we put in for some of those critical projects somewhere around, I think it's the $250,000 or 202. I can't see on my notes. No, 200.
It's 250,000.
Somewhere in there. So we put that amount of money in there just because we knew there would be those types of things that have arisen every single year. Every single year that I've been in Asheville City Schools, and I went backwards. Now I've got it so you can't see. Let me see if I can get this flipped around here. Hold on a minute. There we go. These are the last 3 years of capital expenditures. We've over those 3 years, we've spent almost $500,000, $500,000 over that time. So the average, basically, we knew we were going to spend around $200,000 if we every year on this building. So we went ahead and put that into the budget just because we were worried those things would occur again. The trouble is that we can't continue to do that without really addressing the larger needs. Basically, and I think Dawn, you said this well, it's putting a very small Band-Aid on a very large problem. And we know that that's not something that's sustainable over a long period of time. So we just want to make sure we make decisions. But now at the same time, this year, we're committed to make sure that everyone in that building is safe, and we're going to, do everything we can to upgrade it as best we can while there are kids in that building.
Yeah, we've done things just recently to improve the air quality. We did a mediation of all the piping insulation over there that had some mold infestation on it. So all of that was removed, and brand new insulation was put on, a different type of material than what they used in the 1950s. So just we've done those kind of things. We did some work upstairs. So currently right now, I want to be sure that everybody understands, is the way the school is sitting now, it's safe. It does have some asbestos building materials that if you start with a demo or you start to do work in certain areas, it takes a third party to come in and to remove that prior to even us. Like if it was us, maintenance, have to put it in a water line. Then if we had to cut that floor, we have to have a third party to come in and do that. But, the thing I do want to reiterate that right now, everything is stable. The indoor air quality is stable. Any of the other hazardous conditions with asbestos, those kind of things are stable and sealed. And until we started to abate them, it wouldn't be an issue. But we have already spent, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Casta, wasn't it about $80,000 on pipe insulation and some,
Yeah, that sounds right. I've got the quotes here. I'll update that here just in a second. I'll add them up.
Okay.
So while Shane is adding those up too, we did get a question, and Dawn and Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, asking about expanding Asheville primary to include 4th and 5th grade. Given what we've already shared with families, we told them that given the current building condition, no discussion regarding expansion has taken place. Instead, we're really trying to focus on the safety and feasibility of the current campus. But is there anything else about expanding that you would like to add?
Let me just, Dawn was correct. It's around $80,000 worth of materials alone that we put in, let alone outside of the testing that we've done as well. The testing that we have done both before and after the project to show that it was effective. Total, I think, was around $110,000 for the whole project. Just speaking to expansion of that building at the moment, I don't believe, based on the needs that are critical and high priority, it would be wise at this moment to have a plan for expansion, given the fact that we would have to do significant work to parts of those buildings before it would be viable for expansion. That was actually one of the reasons that was not feasible, when that was considered a couple of years ago. So, yeah, certainly at this time, the expansion would have to be delayed well after the dealing of all the critical and high priority needs for the building.
Because the building, let me just speak like to wastewater. The building with the student population that we have in it currently, it really pushes that wastewater system to do that. So Mr. Casta is right with the things that we're faced with currently. I don't think that we would look at any kind of expansion prior to fixing some of those critical issues. That's just an example of one of the reasons student population doesn't need to go up is those, like I say, the things you can't see. I call it the facility holds you hostage. So, we had this building was built in the 50s. So that's all cast iron piping, things like that under the ground. So some of that's beginning to fail. So the more pressure that you put on that, the additional students you put on that, then it pushes that system even harder. So I think any kind of an expansion anytime soon would not be happening. Is that correct, Mr. Casta?
That's correct. That's correct.
I have a question related to enrollment numbers and the funding for renovations or a new facility. Is it okay if I ask that now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead, Paul.
Polly, just identify yourself though, just in case. Sorry.
I'm Polly, preschool enrollment and engagement coordinator. I always have a lot of questions. One thing that I thought of after the last town hall is I remember in the conversations about the new buildings for Dixon and Asheville Middle, when they were built, they were at capacity. And I'm remembering that there was an issue with the county not approving funds for a new building much beyond their current enrollment, because you don't want to build big buildings that have whole halls empty and that kind of thing.
Sure.
I'm wondering how that plays into the return on investment and accessing funds to repair our building. I know last year we had about 250 kids. This year, because of COVID and reduced capacity, our enrollment is a lot lower. And I'm wondering if we're in a catch-22 with county funding being such a small school, but the facilities stop the expansion every year, but then can you get the funds to repair the facility to be able to expand? I'm just curious how you guys are thinking about that.
No, that's a great question, Polly. As a matter of fact, to give you an example, like the large project money, the special project money, the ones that were over 100,000, in years past, they had funded much larger amounts of dollars. This year, we only had $17 million with which to compete with Buncombe County Schools for.
Isn't that also AB Tech too, Mr. Casta?
Yes, that's.
I was gonna say it's because we're all.
Yeah. So Dawn, I think in years past that amount had been more like 30 or 30 million, was it not? A couple
Right.
of years ago?
It was. And I can speak to the two new schools, Dixon and the middle school. That it was said that they were at capacity. There was actually room for growth in both of those schools when they build them, and that's what we do. That what everyone tries to do is plan for expansions, those kind of things. So those two schools, when we built them, the county commissioners funded each one of those differently at different times. But so in planning a school, you look at your ADM, and then, as you know, Polly, Asheville is growing so fast. One, 40 unit condominium can change the student population overnight. And so we try to take all of those things into consideration, working with the Department of Instruction, because they tell us, how much, what they recommend space-wise for K-3, 9, 12. So those are the kinds of figures that we try to work with, and we look at our current ADM, and from that point forward, we then plan the construction and try to design the buildings to where we do have area for growth. Does that make sense? Does that help answer your question?
Yes. Is it a factor with money for renovations, or is it just the general return on investment? They decide, is it worth spending this much money for a building serving 200 kids?
So I'll answer that. I believe they're taking the return on investments, probably the largest piece. Now they do look at the enrollment numbers overall for the district, because they would also want to know things like, okay, are they know we're a magnet district, are your other buildings, what are they at capacity or not? So right now, from last year, we dropped about 100 students from COVID, maybe a little closer to 200, somewhere between 100 and 200. The numbers change every day, so it's kind of hard to get an exact figure. But really what's hidden in that is our elementary numbers are way lower. Our high school is actually higher. The high school actually has 100 more students than it did last year. So our elementary right now is actually at a lower point than we were projecting even 3 or 4 years ago. So they would look at that and say, do you have capacity across your district for other students? And so that would be a question we would have to answer. Yes.
So, Mr. Casta or Don, one of the questions that we got in from Mr. Cook is, why was a new school created in this building if it wasn't able to support growth? And I don't know if y'all can answer this now or if it's something that we need to think about and, get back to him on. I just wanted to make sure y'all knew that was in the chat.
I'll speak to that. I don't have a problem speaking to that. One, Mr. Cook, that's a great question. I mean, I'm sure that was probably well, considered early on. I think a couple of things. One, that was a previous board, 2 or 3 superintendents ago now, and I know at the time when that was questioned of our maintenance department, Don, you were there and you could speak to what you had said, but I think you gave some information that you felt like you had some concerns about the expansion of that project there at Haywood at the time.
And one of my concerns was, of course, the infrastructure, but the other was when you have a pre-K wing and then you have a K3 wing, you can't intermingle the two, those kind of things. So I wasn't privy to all the meetings that helped create this new school that we have. But from the infrastructure side, from the facility side, from the maintenance side, we definitely had concerns about doing that. Yes, sir, you're right.
Now, I do want to say this. I want to do 2 things here. The creation of Asheville Primary itself is a tremendous school. It's a tremendous environment, tremendous culture. That's why you're all here tonight. So, Don and I look at, we have to always have 2 heads in our mind, or 2 brains in our mind in thinking about this. So there's the brain that says Asheville Primary as a school, teachers, curriculum, students, is a wonderful thing, beautiful thing.
PTC, I'm just going to go and brag on them too for a second because they're awesome.
They're awesome. I mean, all the programs are awesome.
Yeah. So, but then there's the campus that houses Asheville Primary. Don and I have severe concerns about the campus. We would have had, Don obviously said he had severe concerns, 7 or 8 years ago when this first conversation started. So, I think those are 2 separate things, and I want to make sure that we're speaking of those separately. Okay.
Awesome. So that is all the questions that we have in. And Don and Shane, at this point in our agenda, we are supposed to open it up to questions and let people share their thoughts with us. But did you guys want to add anything else before we open it up to the group? I just wanted to check.
No, I'll try to answer any question we can. What we can answer, then we will research and get them back to you, Ashley Michelle.
Yep, that sounds great. And I'm also, if you just, like I said in the meeting, hold on, I accidentally just closed that tab. Because I know that people are going to have stuff that may come up later, or if you just want a little bit more time, here is the link to our Google form. Let me put it in. And then we'll be sharing it with all of our families again tomorrow too, just to give everybody, additional opportunities to think about things. If you'd like to answer questions that way. But at this point, we'll just open it up. If anybody had any questions for Shane or Dawn? I'm not sure if we'll post it on the Asheville City Schools Facebook page, but we'll be uploading it to our website, this recorded meeting, and we'll post it on that way. That's what we've been doing. That's what we did with the Vance town halls. We didn't post them live, or we didn't post them on our Facebook page. We just have them on the website, and the people at Vance can view them that way.
While we're waiting, Ashley Michelle, excuse me. I just want to say that I really appreciate the effort that our maintenance department puts forward in trying to keep the building at a place where it feels safe and usable and secure each day. It's difficult. The custodians there at Asheville Primary have a tall task. It's simply harder to do those things in a building that is, I guess what, 60 years old? Is that right?
Yeah.
Is it 60?
So 52.
I was going to say it's between 60 and 70 years.
70 years
Yeah,
old. Yeah. So
there has been one renovation, but the actual building, I think, was built around 1952.
Yeah. Just the difficulty in doing that. The other part is that's a very difficult intersection to manage to begin with. Our buses, which is also a part of our transportation was also part of my auxiliary department. We routinely have to go there with our buses because of that intersection is so difficult to navigate. We've had a couple of bus accidents that have been just outside the loop there. That road through Argyle has been a constant issue that we've tried to address. Unfortunately, in the I26 expansion, really Argyle will not be really improving at all. Now, our bus loop and that loop would certainly get some attention from DOT, which we'd appreciate, but there's not really an improvement to Argyle that's going to help. So that's a little disturbing. The median section and that piece there too is obviously going to create some different traffic patterns that we're not sure how it's going to affect our transportation department. So those are other things that we're also looking at in my department.
All right. Did anyone want to unmute themselves and ask a question of Shane or Dawn? Or put it in the chat. We can go that way too. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So as a reminder, we will be discussing curriculum and during our November 10th meeting. So that is going to be the time where we're going to have a curriculum director here to talk more about Montessori and what that looks like for Asheville Primary School and all the good things there. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this up. All right, Don and Shane, did you want to say anything today?
No, just appreciate the way everybody works with us at Asheville Primary, the teachers, the staff, everybody over there. Just great. It's a great school. And so they really work well with our maintenance department. And I just want to say that.
So Lauren, I just saw your chat that came. I just saw your question in the chat. So that one, why can't we agree to keep the Montessori framework or not? So at this point, today's discussion was about the facilities and about the DOT connector. That will probably be discussed more during the November 10th meeting. And I do have your question. Here, let me take a screenshot of it right now. And I will make sure that that can be addressed during our November 10th meeting. Today's was just more about infrastructure and DOT. Awesome, thank you. All right, Mr. Casta, anything you wanted to say? Okay.
There we go. No, just put in chat, thank you for everybody participating, and we look forward to the November meeting and have those thoughts as we turn to a different direction. But we just want to thank Ms. Williams and Dr. Cheeks and Susanna Smith. We want to thank them and everybody, Polly, and all the staff that are there tonight. I see several of you that are here, so we appreciate you and look forward to working with you guys.
Yes, thank you so much. Y'all are amazing. And thank you so much to the Asheville Primary School community. And like I said, I'll be sending y'all another email probably tomorrow. Thank y'all so much. Have a great rest of your night.
And thank you so much, Michelle.
Oh, of course.
Thank you.
Of course.
You do a wonderful job also.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much.